Hey, what's up everyone? It's Nicole, and today I wanted to talk about a movie that I recently watched, which was, well, it kind of stems from two movies. The first movie I watched recently was 30 Days of Night, which, if you don't know, is essentially a movie about vampires, and it stars Josh Hartnett and Melissa George. It came out in 2007, I believe, and it's basically about a little sleepy Alaskan town that is basically tormented by vampires during a period of time where the sun doesn't shine in their town. So I watched this movie recently, and right after I watched it, if you haven't seen the film, at the end, Melissa George, who is, I guess, kind of like the wife of the main character in the film, who is Josh Hartnett, and she kind of just has this look on her face that you can tell that she is upset about everything that happened during the course of that film, and that she looks like she might want to possibly have revenge on this clan of vampires. So after seeing this, even though, okay, again, backing up a little bit, I have watched this movie a few times, and so this was not my first time, but this was the first time that I watched the film, and I thought to myself, I wonder if there is a sequel to this film. And so right after I watched it, I decided to look it up and see if there was a sequel, and I discovered that there was indeed a sequel, which is 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. I decided to watch it. I even paid good money for it because even though it looked like a pretty cheesy and corny film, I do tend to like those movies from time to time, and I just thought it would be something fun for me and my husband to watch one day. So we decided that one day we were going to watch it and pay for it. It was like $4, I think, on Amazon Prime. And so we bought it and we watched it, and it was pretty bad. So I'm going to be talking about exactly why I did not like that film and why I think it is complete garbage. So again, first I just want to kind of discuss maybe some of the reasons why I loved the first one so much. Mainly it had to do with the fact, I mean, of course, I think it's a very good story. I don't think the first film itself got a lot of acclaim, I guess you could say. There wasn't that many people talking about it. I don't think it won any awards, at least not that when I did a quick little Google search did I see anything about that. I don't think it even performed very well in the box office. But the reason why I enjoyed it so much is, one, the story. I think it's kind of a cool story about a town, you know, that doesn't have any darkness. That seems like a prime time for vampires to come out and do their business. But I also loved the fact that these vampires were truly scary. I think we're all used to kind of seeing vampires like from Twilight, or even like Vampire Diaries, which was another show I used to really like. Even Interview with the Vampire. All the vampires that we're used to seeing are really pretty. They're things that you would probably go up and approach to if you saw them on the street. They're not anything different from what we look like. But in 30 Days of Night, the vampires are truly scary. They look scary. They look different from us as regular people. They kind of have like slanted eyes that make them look really scary. Their teeth are very sharp. Their nails are really pointy. You know, they speak another language, even though that's not very scary in and of itself, but it's scary when you put that against like the vampires. They speak in a language that sounds very ancient. I think a lot of the scenes where they're killing people are very brutal. Okay, so 30 Days of Night, Dark Days came out in 2010, and from what I understand, it was actually originally supposed to star Melissa George, but for one reason or another, she just wasn't in it. What the story is about, it is about Stella, who was originally played by Melissa George, and it's her basically trying to go out into the world and kind of warn people that there are indeed vampires and that vampires are real. Off the bat, I don't think this was a story that I thought it was going to be. My idea of what the story was going to be was that Stella was going to... So in the first film, let me back it up a little bit again. In the first film, there's a scene where all the characters, there's literally like 4 characters left who haven't died, and they're talking, and this is when the vampires are kind of starting to burn down their town to prevent any evidence that vampires were ever there, and to make it kind of look like it was just an accident. So as this is happening, the characters are talking amongst themselves, and they are saying that this is going to happen in cities that are close by to their city. This, paired with the look on her face at the end, made me believe that Stella was going to go to these other towns and that she was going to possibly warn them, and maybe, I don't know, be too late by the time she got there to warn them, and that the vampires were already going to be there. So since she already lived through it the first time, she was kind of more prepared for it the second time, and that her and the town were going to take down this vampire clan once and for all. Something along those lines. I don't know. Maybe I'm not actually a good storyteller. Who knows? But that's what my idea of what it was going to be like. I didn't really envision Stella's character as being a vampire hunter, which is what she turns into in the sequel. The character Stella herself kind of seemed like she changed to me too. In the first film, she is kind of not timid, like she definitely can handle her own. I think she's also kind of like a deputy or sheriff or something of that nature. In Dark Days, she seems kind of apprehensive, I guess you could say, at first to go hunt these vampires or to be around vampires. But then it kind of seems like a switch, and all of a sudden she's an expert at killing vampires, and she's not afraid to go into the dark where all the vampires are at, and she's gonna shoot them, and she has all these like cool ideas on how to do, almost kind of like an action hero, I feel. And to me, that just didn't really seem like it played well into her character from the first film, only because she didn't seem like an action hero in the first film. She seemed like a regular person who happened to come across vampires who wanted to tear apart her town, and her ex-husband or estranged husband had to figure out a way to kill them and save the town. Or not even kill them, just save their town and stay alive. And that seems kind of more realistic to me in the sense of that would happen with real people. I don't think real people would be like, let's try and tear down these vampires. They'd be like, how do we survive this? And so it just can seem like a big flop or inconsistency in that aspect of who she is as a person. Also, too, I know because they recast her in the opening scene of Dark Days, they shot the scene at the end of the first film where she's kind of holding Eben, and when he dies, I know spoilers, sorry, when he dies, and she kind of has a look on her face. So in the first Stella, in the original Melissa George's Stella, you can see like she looked pissed, right? But when they refilmed it, the new Stella seemed like she was kind of sad and depressed, and I feel like that carried over into her Stella that she portrayed in the film. I don't know, maybe it was just like an acting thing, like they both took it into a different direction, because the second Stella obviously seemed more sad, which makes sense because she would be sad, but I don't know, it just seemed like inconsistent to me. Another thing that kind of irritated me in this film was the character Amber in the film. Initially, she seemed kind of like she was going to be like the badass and kind of like, I don't give a fuck and I'm going to do whatever it takes, but then she seemed to be the one who was always initially afraid to do anything. There was a scene where they were kind of entering one of the housings of the vampires, and they all are going in there, and she's the first one to be like, let's turn around and go back. But it just, I don't know, to me it just seemed like a real flip-flop of her character as well. She goes from being, oh, this girl's gonna make it, she's gonna hold us down and she's gonna get us killed, to now you're being the one who's actually gonna end up getting everyone killed because you're loud, you're acting erratic and too fearful, and it's like you're not thinking correctly when you're in these types of scenarios. So it's like, come on girl, get it together. Either you're a badass and you're gonna go take down these vampires, or you're afraid and you think people should think things through. It's like, come on, be consistent, pick a side. And I know there's a possibility for like a love interest in this with one of the characters for Stella. I just didn't feel like it was organic in the sense of the film. I don't think the film needed it. But of course, they have like a sex scene, a love interest, and like literally it wasn't even like a love interest. I didn't feel any type of chemistry between the two actors who played, I don't even remember the dude's name, but the character of Stella and him. I feel like they had no chemistry the whole time, so that's why I didn't really think that they were ever going to have any type of interest in each other. And they maybe had like one deep conversation with each other in the film, and even then it didn't seem like something that was going to lead to anywhere. And then so they went from that to now they're about to get it on in this thing, and they have like a full-blown freaking sex scene. I'm like, that came out of nowhere, homie. They're like, what does this have to do with anything? And it just didn't seem to me like it propelled the story anywhere. It just kind of was just put there for the sake of having a love interest. It's like, not every story has to have a love interest. The last two things I want to briefly talk about is the blood in the film and the vampires. Like I said, from the first film, the vampires were kind of the thing that set them apart from other vampire films and other horror films with vampires, in that they were scary. The second film, they were not scary. They looked almost comical, and like you could tell, I don't know, I know the budget was also lower for this film, so I know that obviously has something to do with it, but it's like, they just didn't seem as scary. They could speak English perfectly fine. Yeah, they did have the main Queen Bee one speaking a different language, but I don't know, it just didn't seem as intimidating as the first vampires from the first film. Yes, they had, again, the teeth and the nails and all of that, but I don't know, they just didn't seem like they were the same type of vampire. The blood in the film, I understand that you have a lower budget at least, for the second film. But it's like, if you're a vampire film, I think your blood in the film has to look more like blood than actually like juice. Specific scene where the character Dane, who happens to be a vampire and is helping the vampire hunter crew track down Lilith, who is the queen bee vampire. Anyway, and Stella's asking him like, oh, what do you drink? How are you surviving? How are you still like here, like a person and not like a bloodthirsty vampire? And he begins to show her what he feeds on, which is, it's blood obviously, but he pours it into a cup and it straight looks like juice. It is nowhere near looking as thick as blood. Now, for a brief moment, I do want to talk about maybe some positives of the film. I don't want to make it seem like I completely and 1000% hated this film. I think this film was just bad as a sequel. It doesn't really seem like the same type of storyline to me, as I've already said. I think if it was a standalone film, it would have been maybe a little bit better, just because I feel like on its own, without like any type of connection to the first film, I think it would have been more believable. Again, even though the blood and all that vampires weren't as scary or didn't look as real as the first one, I think if it was a standalone film, I would have believed it more and just been more okay with it, I guess you can say. Yeah, and again, I feel like the story maybe just wasn't lived up to the story that in my head that I thought it was going to be, and because of that, I also am kind of a little biased, I guess, and hating on it a little bit more. But I feel like if I had gone into this film without any preconceived notions of maybe even what the first film was, or if I had never seen the first film and had nothing to base on the original story on, then maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. And another thing I just want to add to is, I know that these films were based off of a graphic novel. I guess they actually tried to submit the film first, but they tried to pitch it to studios and it kept getting denied, so then that's when they made the graphic novels, and then after the graphic novels were successful, that's when they made a film. I guess the first one wasn't as closely based on the graphic novels, and apparently the second one was. So I don't know what that says about anything. It kind of hurts my feelings a little. Okay, so that's pretty much my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think as well. Have you seen Dark Days, and what your kind of thoughts are on that? If you've even seen the first original, 30 Days of Night, let me know what you think of that. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.